The Holy Gospel is recorded in the 6th chapter of the Gospel according to St. John, verses 1 through 15. After this, Jesus went to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, also called the Sea of Tiberias. A large crowd kept following him because they saw the signs that he was doing for the sick. Jesus went up the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, the festival of the Jews, was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a large crowd coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread for these people to eat?" Jesus said this to test him, for he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered him, 6 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each of them to get a little. One of Jesus' disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to Jesus, "Well, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what are they among so many people?" Jesus said, "Make the people sit down." Now there was a great deal of grass in the place, so they sat down, about 5,000 in all. Then Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were satisfied, he told his disciples, "Gather up the fragments left over, so that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up. And from the fragments of the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten, they filled 12 baskets. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they began to say, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the world." When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Galiland News, straight from the north coast of the Sea of Galilee. This resort town, this resort community against the Sea of Galilee has been experiencing some awesome and marvelous things in the past few days, and we are pleased here at Galiland News to bring you this special breaking news and broadcast. But first, ladies and gentlemen, a word from our sponsors. Our newscast today is sponsored by Samuel's Seed and Feed in Capernaum, just over the hill to the north of us here. Are your camels feeling a little sluggish? Do they need to have a little more oomph and horsepower to them? Then by all means, stop in at Samuel's Feed and Seed. There's a fresh arrival of a whole donkey train, whole caravan of fresh oats straight from the Mediterranean coast. It is superb oats. It's guaranteed to put a little extra kick in your camels. Just don't stand behind them when they do. But ladies and gentlemen, come in and get your feed for your camels. There's a bit of a limited supply, so there will be no haggling, there will be no bartering, there will be no discussing of price, but with each of the first 15 orders, we will give you a full 2 ephah measure of salt straight from the Dead Sea. Remember, Samuel's Seed and Feed, just over the hill in Capernaum. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the breaking news, some of it you already know, but for the past 2 years, there's been this man named Jesus of Nazareth, also just over the hill from here, who has been traveling about all of the Galilean area and beyond. Sometimes he's causing quite a stir, and sometimes he's really rather peaceful. The Romans don't care for him much. Our own people, well, we're pretty thrilled with what he's doing. He's surprising the living daylights out of the Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees. The rabbis are amazed at the way he's teaching. So you've been hearing a lot about this rabbi, Jesus of Nazareth. He's been successively gathering his followers. There's reportedly at least 12 men that are following him steadily and going pretty much wherever he's going, and it's almost as if he's their mentor and he's training them and teaching them. They too are well-versed in Scripture. They too are involved in his teaching and all of those kinds of things. But it seems like everywhere this Jesus of Nazareth goes, he's drawing a crowd. And here at the north end of the Sea of Galilee, it happened again. 2 weeks ago, on this very mountainside, just 2 weeks ago, we have had reports that this man attracted a crowd that exceeded 5,000 people. From that crowd, there have been 4 men who have come forward, willing to be interviewed to tell us a bit about what's going on. We understand that some of them are actually writing down the accounts of what it was that had happened. It is amazing. It is amazing of what we are hearing. We introduce to you Matthew. He's from Capernaum, just like I said, across the hills here. There's Mark. There's Luke, who seems to have a real strong interest in medical stuff. And then there's John, who seems to talk at kind of a different level than the others, almost as if he's a bit of a theologian, a scholar. So I introduced to you tonight this morning these 4 individuals: Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Thank you for joining us. Matthew, would you tell us, please, what's going on? What's happening? What's going on around this community in the last 2 weeks? Well, sir, it's really been kind of amazing. It's caught even us who are the followers of Jesus off guard. You know, of course, Jesus of Nazareth is our rabbi. He's our leader. Jesus and John the Baptist were relatives. And so when Jesus heard about the death of John the Baptist, man, it hit him hard. Jesus' mother, Mary, and John's mother, Elizabeth, were, I think, cousins. They were both pregnant at the same time, so Jesus and John are about the same age. And when Jesus was about 30, Jesus went and stepped down into the Jordan River and was baptized by John. Both of them, both Jesus and John, have been actively telling people about the coming of the kingdom of God and talking about God's love and compassion and forgiveness. Those two had a close relationship in what they were talking about. So when Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been beheaded by King Herod, it hit Jesus pretty hard. He needed some time away. And so he gathered us up, invited us to come along, and we decided to head for a rather remote spot to see if we couldn't find a little bit of rest. The crowds had been gathering around Jesus. They had seen him heal the sick. They had seen him give sight to a man that was blind. They had seen him raise a man from the dead. All of these kinds of things left the people, as well as his teaching, wondering what's coming next. And so we couldn't get away from the crowds. We couldn't escape them. They just kept surrounding us and building and building. And finally, the day went on, and Jesus was teaching, and the people were just hanging on every word he said. And we realized, this crew ought to go home. They need to go home. They've got to be fed somehow. And so we suggested that to Jesus. And he shocked us by saying, tell them to sit down. Ooh. Tell them to sit down? You get a group of people like that and tell them to sit down, they're knowing that something more is coming. Jesus, what more do you have to give them? All that's here is a couple fish and some barley loaves. And he told them to sit down. We were all caught off guard by that. Man, we were caught off guard. Mark, tell them how tough it was. Matthew's right. It was really strange. It was really strange because we expected Jesus to tell everybody, just go home. That's all I've got for you today. Go home. Find something to eat. Go home. But no, he didn't. It had seemed so innocent when Jesus said, come on guys, let's just go find some place to rest. But when we got into the boat and started crossing the Sea of Galilee, we could see all these people moving in mass along the shoreline, watching the boat, and they were drawing closer and closer to where we were going ashore with the boat. And when we landed, they were there. This was not going to be a time for some R&R. This was not going to be a break for Jesus that he wanted. We stepped out of the boat and the people were just surrounding him, eager to hear. Did he disappoint them? Did he send them away? No, he didn't. He taught them. He healed the sick. He spoke compassionately to them. He shared with them the scriptures. All of these things that they were expecting and hoping for, he did. We kept watching to see if this was going to drain him even more, but it almost seemed as if he gained more and more energy as the day went on. And then, like Matthew said, there came that realization, these people need to go home. They need to go and get something to eat. I think that's where Luke, our resident physician, kind of was getting a little worried. You know about those people in the medical community. They see something wrong with somebody and they kind of say, well, you really ought to take a little better care of yourself. Luke, tell us what was going on. Well, Mark, there's no way that large group of people should have stayed that night or that late in the day in that rugged terrain. They were dehydrated. They needed food. There was no protection from the elements. Man, anybody that knows anything at all about healthcare, you just don't take that many people to that kind of a place and leave them there. But we didn't have any supplies. There were just, like the guys said, a couple fish and some loaves of bread. Jesus had been so busy curing the sick, I think he lost track of time. He had been so busy healing those who were the cripples that he wasn't conscious of what was going on. He was so wrapped up in and getting everyone wrapped up in talking about the kingdom of God. He was giving them hope in the face of the turmoil and the unrest that the Romans were causing as we lived among them. Before we knew it, the sun was going down, and we all knew that this rugged hillside was no place to have people after dark. We were getting worried. And when he surprised us and told everybody to sit down, we thought this is going to be one long night. And that's when it happened. It was all beyond belief. John, why don't you tell us what happened? John, you've got a good perspective on this. Well, thanks, Matthew, Mark, Luke. Yeah, we all saw it. We all heard it. We're all writing about it. What was it? It was a sign. I'm convinced it was a sign. It was a miracle, and it was a sign that God is gracious and good and kind and cares about the physical needs of all his people. It was a sign like I have never seen before. Feeding of 5,000 people, those 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Folks, that turned out to be enough to feed 5,000 men plus the women and children. How did he do it? How did he do it? It was a sign. The caterer, if you want to call him that, the caterer was God himself, multiplying the loaves and the fish so that it was adequate, more than adequate. There was an abundance so that everyone ate their fill, and everything that was left over was saved. I have never seen so many people fed with so little. There was the hand of God actively involved there. It was the hand of God that was passing out those loaves and those fish. He was working through all of us as he made something so small feed so many. I saw the Son of God in Jesus of Nazareth, the Son of God who is concerned not only about our spiritual and theological well-being, but our physical well-being as well. It was a sign, all right, a sign that no one could miss, and one that people for years will come to hear about, they will read about, and they will be impacted by it. God worked a miracle in the lives of a lot of people that day, and He's not stopping. The people, I think, some of them anyway, will keep coming back to Him because they'll sense that, okay, here's a place where we can get bread for free. But I hope they realize that this Jesus isn't just giving out bread. Jesus is the bread of life. And He's giving us Himself. Wow! You guys really have a story to tell. And all of you are writing this down, I understand. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Thanks for being here today and being a part of Galiland News. Shalom. Shalom. Ladies and gentlemen, this event has had an incredible impact on the whole region of Galilee. The impact will go far beyond here. We're already starting, even though it's only been 2 weeks, we're already starting to hear that people in Jerusalem have heard it, and they're starting to flock around this rabbi as well. It's safe to say that this event, this feeding of the 5,000, will be recorded. Those guys are going to write it down. They're going to tell about it. And people for thousands of years will hear the story about that event, that miracle, and about this rabbi. I wonder, 2,000 years from now, what will someone say about it?
Hey, thank you for inviting me here today to talk to you. I was asked to come and talk about how Jesus is still working miracles here 2,000 years later. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about me, a little bit about my family, and a little bit about what Gloria Dei means to us. My name is Rachel Hensley, and I have been a member at Gloria Dei for 30 years now. And so I have gotten the privilege to see God's miracles work in many different ways in my 30 years here at Gloria Dei. Right now, I am a member of the adult choir, and my daughter Emma is in the children's choir. I also am in the card cast and am on the altar committee. So I think that for me being so involved at church was really instilled in me 30 years ago when we started at Gloria Dei. And my mom and dad were very involved in church school, and they were on the rotation to bring the coffee, I'm shaking, the coffee and donut holes to church on Sunday mornings. And so they were very involved, and they made sure that we were very involved in church as well. And through all of that involvement, we made some really good friendships and made really good relationships with the people at church and became really close to them. In 1990, my dad passed away, and those friends that we made at church really gathered around us, and they literally fed us at that time. They brought food over to our house and really took care of us and helped us to realize that the only way we're going to get through these tough times is by strengthening our faith and really having those people around us and gather around us. And for those of you who know my mom, she's a very strong person as well. And anytime we've had tough times in life, she has really just held strong to her faith and gotten through that with just the people around her and our leaders at church. And the reason I'm telling you about all of this and my family and how involved we've been in church is because, like Pastor Loren said in his children's sermon, we can do more together than we can individually. But I think it's really important that we know what everybody is doing individually so we can know how far our outreach is going and how many people are affecting others here. So I was really excited that Becky called and asked me to be part of the Loaves and Fishes campaign because I got to see it. I got to see the miracle happen 2,000 years after it really did. So in 1985, our church started in a gym, in an elementary school gym, and now we're here today with those 12 extra baskets to hand out. We have so much more to hand out to people and to give to people now. And it was just amazing to see in 30 years it grow from what Gloria Day started to what it is now. And I am really excited for our mission to continue and for our outreach to grow. And I was really excited to be a part of this campaign, and I hope everybody else is as excited as I am about it. So thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this amazing story from the north shore of the Sea of Galilee won't be forgotten. Neither will the key figure, this Jesus of Nazareth. It seems his followers keep multiplying like the fish and the loaves. From Galiland News, this is your reporting. This is your reporter, reminding you that what God can do with something as simple as a couple fish and some loaves of bread. What he can do is indeed good news.